What's going on, guys? My name is Tim Ruswick, and today we're talking about half-assing stuff. But more specifically, we're talking about the thin line between half-ass and good enough. I posted a lot of videos about, go with good enough, or learn how to prioritize, or figure out, don't worry about perfectionism. Don't get stuck on shiny object syndrome, that kind of thing. Two opposing ideas, right? One is you should leave stuff unperfect and move on with the other important stuff and finish the game, finish the damn game, right? That's my slogan at this point. And then the other side is you want to make a great game. You don't want to let the player down. You don't want to slack off and, do something that's mediocre when you could have did something that was great. So how do these two ideas fit together? What makes them, how do you know the line between half-ass and good enough? It's really hard. Okay, I'm just gonna say that. I still struggle with it. If you've watched any of my streams, making games on stream, same thing. I struggle with, I need to tweak the shit out of this thing to, fuck it, let's leave it, it's fine. And it's come up a couple times, part of you guys, I could tell which side of the fence you guys are on by the questions that you ask. Some people are like, yeah, totally. Leave it, stop messing around with music, stop messing around with whatever. Go, Tim, you got an hour before midnight, get to finish Friday. Other guys like, no, that font's horrible. You can't stick with that font. What are you doing, Tim? Why are you moving on? What's going on? So, for me, how I find this thin line is I ask myself, is there something that's higher priority that needs to be done? And if there is, I drop the other thing. Now, in order for this to work, you got to understand what is a priority in your system and what isn't. And this is one of the reasons why I love Finish Friday, to be honest, because we have to finish a game on stream. It has made me very good at figuring out what specifically needs to be done next. What do we need to do? What do we still have to do? A lot of times it's menu screens and mute options and the boring stuff. And I'm constantly going, okay, what else do we need to do to finish this game? What else do we need to do to publish? That keeps me moving pretty quickly on a range of things that I might obsess over normally. I'm obsessing on a lot of Philophobia stuff, to be honest, because I don't have you guys watching over my shoulder. I don't have the deadline of finishing a game on stream that night. So I'm obsessing over a lot of stuff. I spend a lot of time animating entire characters that just they don't fit, or making random props or objects or coding systems and they just it doesn't work. Boom. And part of that is basic prototyping, but part of that is also me choosing to go with the stuff that's good enough and me prioritizing and moving on. And it's really important to know the priority of something. And I don't want this to be confused, though, because I don't want to necessarily say, let's say you're finishing a game and you don't have a menu and you're working on the player animation and you want to publish. So obviously the menu is more important than the player animation, right? Because you can't publish without a menu. You could probably publish without the player animation. But the player animation is probably one of those things that makes the game feel really good. It's really important. So just that tick box of what's important in the game, what specifically is, higher on the priority list, I think needs to come from a lot of different perspectives. And it's just something you have to learn over time, I think. You have to get better at deciphering which things need to be tweaked and which things don't. For me, specifically, anything to do with animation or player movement, top priority in the game. Anything to do with first visual impact, menu screens or feature images or icons, stuff like that, top priority. Because those two things, one, those are the first things that people are going to see when they come in contact with your game. 2, those are the first things that people are going to feel when they play your game. So those 2 things I think are super important, and I don't skimp on those. I try not to skimp on those the most that I can. I put the highest priority into those, and I tweak those endlessly. But there are things that like I leave alone. If something doesn't get seen for a whole lot of time, in the game, generally, like, you know, if it's okay, if it works, move on. Difficulty is another one that I kind of like, you know, I'll skip over if there are other priorities to do. And this is working on a super short deadline. So like, you know, it doesn't apply to like all different types of games, but that thin line between half-ass and good enough is hard to find, and it's really important that you learn to prioritize in order to kind of find it. But I think if you stick to prioritization, if you learn what things the players notice, that's important too. So that's where feedback comes into play. Because I noticed there are some things that I've obsessed over. I've obsessed over so much. I'll show it to testers. They don't even notice it. They literally don't even notice it. And if that's the case, you know, they didn't notice it. So why am I wasting all this time on it? Not to say, you know, you shouldn't add in cool little details that can be found by the very observant players, but, you know, this is an art more than a science. And we forget that, right? Like I remember when I started in game development, I tried to look up the definitive documents on everything to do with game design. I thought there's got to be a right way to make a game. There's got to be a right way to design a mechanic. There's got to be a right way to do all this stuff, but there's no right way. And it's just something that you have to live with. So that line between half-ass and good enough is going to be completely up to you. And that's dangerous for those of us that are lazy, I think. But it's also an opportunity. And if you want to make a great game, you need to pay attention to that stuff. You pay attention to how you feel, especially when you make those decisions. If you're feeling tired, you're feeling burnt out, and you're about to say, oh, this is fine, you probably can't trust yourself right there. That's not the point when you should make that decision. But if you're excited, you want to make the game, you got other stuff that's more priority, but you really want to work on this, but other stuff's high priority, you know, maybe that's the time to make the decision. Even though you want to work on the stuff, now might not be the time to work on that because there's other stuff that's high priority. So it has a lot to do with prioritization. It has a lot to do with how you feel when you make the decisions. But I think after you do it for a while, the decisions start to come out of strength, not out of weakness. And I think laziness and half-assing something comes out of a position of weakness, a position of thinking that you can't do any better, that it's not going to work out, you know, so you give up and you're just like, okay, I'll work on something else. Whereas I think, you know, changing something and leaving something as good enough, that comes out of a position of strength, knowing that, okay, yes, I could improve this. Yes, I could spend more time on this, but there are other things that are more important at this time that I need to address. And it's just something you got to learn. So I hope this video shed some light on that. I hope I was clear enough. I kind of seem like I rambled a bit. If I wasn't, please leave me a comment below and let me know, because I'd be happy to answer any questions you guys have about my experience anyway, because I've had 8 games in 8 weeks now. So a lot of prioritization, a lot of, I like to think, not half-assed. We just went with good enough on some stuff. But, you know, that's up to interpretation. But once again, I'm Tim Roswick, and I will see you guys tomorrow.